Just take
Yay,
it's being recorded.
good group.
It's great to see you all. As most of you know from last week, but I don't think, Betty, you know, my name's Dan Friedman, and I'm the project manager of the Let's Learn project that is being built by the Lloyd's International Honors College in conjunction with the Eastside Institute. So Dean Ali and I are working very closely together to launch this project, and it's wonderful to have you all here. And Henry, will you, if you, does everybody have gallery view and you can see everybody? And if you don't know,
I can't.
okay. Well, Betty, if you look up to the top right, there's a little thing that says view, and then it will drop down, and one of the choices will be gallery.
I don't think I can do that. I'm on an Amazon tablet because my laptop just died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we are joined by Naja Chek too. Hello, welcome, Naja.
Another newcomer to our workshop. Welcome. This is great.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So I was just saying that, introducing myself, I think you know who I am, Naja, so I won't go back over that.
I do.
Yes, and we had a workshop last week, and some people have written off of that, and we're also going to get a chance to work in class today with Henry, who's nodding his head. Those of you who can see him, he is our teacher, instructor, leader of the workshop. Susan Massad, who was the co-leader of the workshop, unfortunately is quite sick. Her health has taken a downward turn rather rapidly. And she's not able to be with us, but she sends her love and wants us all to keep writing. And what we thought we'd do to start off today, especially since there's two new people here, is we'd like to play a little sort of introduction game, and also given that Susan is ill and given what the rough year and a half we've all lived through, to go around, say your name, where you are, and then say, and what I'm grateful for, and say what you're grateful for. Except the game will work like this. Instead of, you'll say, like I said, hi, I'm Dan Friedman. I'm in Montauk, New York, at the eastern tip of New York, of Long Island. And I'm grateful for, and then I would turn it over to, choose anybody, but in this case, I'll choose Omar. And then he'll say what he's grateful for, and then say his name and where he is. And then he'll say the same line, and I'm grateful for, and he may turn it over to Betty. And Betty could turn it over to Ed or whatever, till everybody goes through. And that way we sort of do a group way of meeting each other again, and also just sharing and trying to find something positive to build. Everybody get that? I hear music. Oh, there we go.
Oh, that's my phone.
So when it's your time to talk, you unmute yourself. And for those of you who are new to the screen or whatever, the way you unmute yourself is you go to the bottom left. There's a little icon or illustration that looks like a microphone. And it should, if you're on mute, it's red and has a line through it. If you click on it, it turns white and it doesn't have a line through it, and then you can talk. Okay. So and then the end, like if I start, which I'll start, when we come around again, the last person will say, and I'm grateful for, and come to me, and then I'll say what I'm grateful for, and then we can get started with the class, the other part of the class. So, would we have another person?
Yay.
Do you mind explaining one more time as Sue comes on?
No, of course not.
Okay. Let's see. Hi, Sue, welcome. Oh, she's got her mute on.
We can't see or hear you yet.
Yeah, I'm walking for a moment, so
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
keep that off.
Welcome, Sue.
Hi, Sue. Sue is also
Hi, Henry.
a teacher with Let's Learn. She did a 2-week workshop called the, what was it? The History and Politics of street art around the world, which was a really amazing two-part series of people's art on walls around the world, basically. And we're glad to have her as a student too.
And well, I was going to add, Dan, in addition to that, she's also a very talented memoirist.
Oh, is she? Okay. Well, then it's great to have her on board. So, Sue, what we're going to do, Susan Massad was the co-teacher, but she's, I think you probably know, has taken a turn for her worse in her health and can't be with us. But what we're going to do is we're going to go around, especially since there's 3 of you who weren't here last week, and introduce yourself by your name, where you're located, meaning the city and country, and if it's other than the US, I think we're all in the US. And then say, and what I'm grateful for, because we want to, build on positiveness given our sadness about Susan and the rough year we've gone through, year and a half. And then, but instead of saying what you're grateful for, you'll call on somebody else in the group and they'll say what they're grateful for, introduce themselves, and then say what I'm grateful for and pass it on. So I'll start, and I'm going to be kind of random. I don't know. So hi, I'm Dan Friedman. I'm in Montauk, New York, which is a small fishing and tourist town on the eastern tip of Long Island. And I'm grateful for Nadia.
Hi, I'm not, I see what I'm grateful for first.
Yeah.
That it's fall weather and I'm so happy to be able to be outside again without the mosquitoes.
Okay.
I am Nadia Czech. I am in Greensboro, North Carolina, and grateful for Betty.
Hi, I'm grateful for being out of lockdown after so much time spent doing Zoom, but thank God for Zoom. So my name is Betty Richardson. I'm right down the road from Nadia. I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I'm grateful for Henry.
Thank you, Betty. I am, first of all, happy to be the teacher today. I am therefore going to say I am grateful for writers. I'm grateful for all the writers who get published I get to read, and I'm grateful for the writers I've had the opportunity to work with. And I'm also very grateful for all the writers who have shown up for this class. And I am going to pass it to Alice.
Don't forget to say where you are.
Oh, and I am in grand old New York City. And Alice, unmute yourself.
I'm grateful for dear friends. My name is Alice Rydell. I'm in Manhattan. I live in the Chelsea neighborhood. And I am grateful for Lorraine.
You're on mute.
I'm muted. Yes. Hi, I'm Lorraine, and I am in Long Beach, New York, which is a little beach community not far from New York City. And I am grateful for the fresh air and good health, and for being able to wake up every morning for good health. And I am grateful for Omar.
Hi. So I am grateful because I can actually see all of you, and I'm really grateful that I can see you. My name is Omar, and I am in Greensboro, North Carolina as well. And I am grateful for Hannah.
I am grateful for the fall break coming up because I need it, so that'll be nice. And I'm Hannah, and I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm grateful for Diane.
Diane, it's your unmute.
I think she's talking
Okay.
already.
No, I'm Diane. I'm from the Upper West Side. And I'm very sad because I've been in a group with Susan for about 3 years. So it's hard to pass, it's hard to get past that. So I will pass it on to Lorraine. Did you speak already,
I
Lorraine?
did. Thank you for being grateful for me, though.
To
Ed.
Edward, I think, yeah.
That's 1 second. That's all I see. 1 minute.
I think Ed is the only one who didn't speak yet.
Well, Ed and
Sue.
we have Ed and Sue left.
We can't see Sue, but why don't we go with Ed first and then we'll
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm grateful for Ed.
Thank you. I'm grateful there'll be a real World Series this October. I'm Ed. I'm on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and I'm very grateful for Sue.
Hello.
Hello, Sue.
I'm great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ed.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Sorry. First of all, I'm on the street. I'm grateful that my did early enough
Oh, now I can't hear you.
last and I couldn't. I am. Oh.
You broke up.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying I'm grateful that. Now it broke up again? Right, let's see.
Oh, I lost her.
Oh,
I think
well.
she was saying that she's grateful to have this writing group.
Yes, and even if she wasn't, I think we all are. So that
Yes. So,
way to end.
okay. So should I begin?
Yes. Over now to our teacher, Henry Ferris, longtime professional editor in New York City.
Thank you, Dan. We'll bring Sue in soon. Listen, one thing I wanted to do to start out, because I know we had Nadja and Betty are new with us this week, is I'm going to do the speed version of what I talked about last week, just sort of my general tips. And the reason I'm doing this also is to see if anybody has any questions about it. I'm talking sort of randomly off my head here, Betty and Nadja, but the people last week learned that I think probably the most important word that any writer needs to have in their head is outline. And I'm a big believer in outlining. The outline can take almost any kind of form that you want to take. You can also not use the word outline if it was a word that bothers you. I would put it another way by saying know where you're going before you take the journey there. In other words, know what you're going to write and know where you're going to go. Leading into that, an important part of that knowing where you're going is to also keep in mind the idea of chronology. And what I mean by that is that when one is telling a story, it's always best to tell the story in the order in which it happened.
Yep.
I would say if someone said to me in my years as an editor, what have I seen the thing that has consistently tripped up writers more than anything else, it was that they started telling a story slightly out of the order in which it happened, and they find themselves too often doing what I call the oops, I forgot to tell you moment, where it's an important thing that you aren't understanding what's happening because you didn't know the thing that happened before, and they try to contort themselves to fix it. So in other words, try to do that. I urge memoirists to use dialogue. I think dialogue is dialogue, but then you always don't let yourself be bothered too much by, I can't remember exactly what everybody said. because if you go to the great memoirs, which we'll talk about in a second, they have dialogue. Is that what the people actually said? Well, who knows? But what is the gauge of what you can do in terms of be truthful in memoir, especially with dialogue? Is, as I put it this way, does this express truly your memory of what happened and the conversation that took place, and is, when you are putting words in another person's mouth, is it the truth to the best of your recollection? Because that's really what memoir is. That also sometimes it leads me to a conversation of, as I said, truth in memoir. This is your recounting of events. Obviously, one has to be careful if one is being published with not libeling someone else, invading someone's privacy. I think we have to worry less about this now because we're not really talking about publication yet. But again, it is the truth to the best of your recollection. Another thing that Ed and I talked about this week is that it's the great writing advice cliche that I absolutely firmly believe in, which is don't tell me, show me. In other words, show people what was happening, use detail, draw it out, make the events unfold in a way that someone can experience them. But don't forget another brilliant tool that I find myself telling writers to lean on, which is don't show, tell. You can, and when you tell people what happened in a story, you tell what was happening, is in sometimes where you can express your writing voice more than you do sometimes in narration. Okay, that's the sort of short version of what I talked about last week. And so before we move on a little bit, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions about any of that or any thoughts about it. Anything?
Henry, did you just say, don't tell me, show me, but then don't show, tell?
Well, Alice, here's the cliche, and it's not, you know what, it's a cliche because it's become so often used, but as a piece of writing advice, and I want to emphasize that I believe in it, I agree with it, which is don't tell me, show me, meaning you want to draw out the story in an almost novelistic way. Then this happened, and you use dialogue, and you use Alice, your writing is very strong and good with show me, don't tell me. You're very good at show me, don't tell me. But what can also be effective sometimes is you don't have to draw everything out. You can tell what happened instead, and to get yourself sometimes from one moment to the next. And in those tell me, don't show me sections in memoir is where the writer can express a voice, can give a point of view and opinion about what happened. And in some ways, they can be some of the more engaging sections of memoir, I think. I understand this is slightly confusing because I'm twisting something on something else. So if anybody else has a question about it, I'll do my best to explain what I mean.
So Henry, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is show, don't tell, except sometimes tell also. It's like a yes and, show and tell.
Exactly. That's it, exactly. Anybody else? Did anybody have any questions? What I tell you, know what, I should have previewed a little bit. One thing I'd like to talk about a little bit, and we're going to do some writing our own, and we're going to have a 15 or 20-minute break to do some writing, to either continue what you've already written or write some fresh. And then hopefully I'm going to get you all to read for us what you've either just written or you've written in between last week's class and this way. But I also wanted to take a little time to talk about memoir in general, sort of great memoirs. What I'm also hoping is that some of you've thought of memoirs that yourself. I know that Betty and Naja didn't. That I had asked over the week that you might think of something to talk to us about, and so Betty and Naja, I'll just throw it at you blind and see what you might know that you've read that you've loved. So. Does anybody want to talk about something now? If not, I've got a stack over here of do my quick show and tell.
Mention something that we've read that we've really liked. Is that what you're asking?
Well, you know what? If you could talk about any book that you've read recently or in your life that you loved, I'd love it if it was a memoir.
Do you want us to just throw words in the chat, or do you want us to like give a little summary of what we loved, or what would you, what format are you looking for?
Naja, if you are thinking of a memoir that you have read now or at any time that you really loved, you want to tell us about it, I'd love to hear it.
I'll do that.
Good, get us started.
I am very inspired by Sherilyn Strade's Wild, which is, of course, always on the top list for best memoirs, particularly and author memoirs. She is a brilliant writer. And I love the way she writes about nature and then intersects with talking about sort of the human experience, and find her to be absolutely inspiring in that way.
Wow, I don't know her writing at all. I have to check her out. That's good to know. Yeah. Anyone else?
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Diane?
Yeah, there's an author that I read a number of her books. Her name is, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, Anya Yerzaska. And she writes about coming over and her experiences living in the Lower East Side in the early days. And she's a very good writer. And like I said, I've read a few of her books, not recently, but I wish I could. I could probably. I have one. Let's see. It's YER.
Well, Diane, could I ask you, what is it that you loved about her books? Is it the writing? Is it the story? Or is it, what do you take away from them?
It's the story. She tells stories about, her family, and about, that they had boarders and the boarders' relationship to the family. They came over and they were very poor, and they lived, in a small place with the bathtub in the kitchen and the bathroom outside. And it's just, it's the Lower East Side then as opposed to now, or as opposed to just maybe 10, 15 years ago.
I see.
Because the Lower East Side has changed so much, but there are things about it, like the restaurants, that really haven't changed. They're Polish restaurants, and a lot of Polish restaurants. And after I graduated, I worked down there for a couple of years, and it just felt good to hear her stories. very good story writer.
And it's a series of memoirs, meaning she would
Yeah,
do
it's
one and then
more-
pick up, and then the next one would pick up where the previous one left off.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
they sound great. They sound great. Alice, were you going to tell us about something?
Well, in the last memoir class I took with you, Henry, you recommended Rick Bragg's All Over But the Shoutin'. That you said there were some similarities. And I haven't read many memoirs at all. He grew up, he writes in very a lot of detail about growing up very poor, treated as white trash. And when you said this thing about don't show tell, I remembered a part in the book that hit me. He goes through all this detail, right? Now he's moved on to New York to become a writer with the New York Times. And a friend takes him to his first strip joint. There were two strippers. One of the strippers had a long pink scar down her arm. And that's all he said about it. And that struck me as that tell, don't show thing. It said so much, and it made me think about her life. And anyway, that was my comment.
He's a very powerful writer, very good memoirs. Does anybody else have something they want to tell us about?
Sue has
Betty?
That's me, yeah. I have not read I thought I had not read a lot of memoirs, but when I look at my list of books I've finished over the last year, and I do tend to read a lot. I'm in 2 different book clubs and a Bible study group. I realized that I've gone out of my way to write books by people of color. So the last couple of months, it was mostly Asian writers, and I read, what was it? Note from a Stranger and Minor Feelings, and a couple more that I'm not remembering right now. And this month I've been focusing, well, since last month, I've been focusing on Hispanic writers, and The Secret Talker was another one. I have really, really loved Elizabeth Acevedo's books, Clap When You Land and With the Fire on High, sort of a combination of memoir and coming of age. And then, what was the one I was just trying to remember? I'm looking at my list. What I like about, especially Acevedo, is that, right now I'm trying to read When I Was Puerto Rican by, I can't remember the author's name.
I'm blanking too. Yeah.
Esmeralda, and I can't remember her last name.
Santiago,
thank you. And I'm really struck by the fact that she's telling you one thing, but you're getting a picture of so many other things. She's not saying, we were really very poor, but she's telling you about how the family's home was set up, what they had to do to manage childcare between her and her grandmother, what she had to do to work part-time jobs and go to school and take care of her baby at the same time and manage to graduate from high school. I mean, it's just amazing the things that she's telling you without telling you directly.
Yeah, you know what I would suggest to you as an aspiring writer yourself, when you're reading these books, I mean, don't forget to enjoy them, but also sort of but listen out for the way the person is talking to you, and the way, I think we're not conscious of the fact that, it's the thing that I have the hardest time explaining what it is, but how she's telling you the story from a certain point of view, and that how that's being expressed. As I say, primarily enjoy the book, but but listen out for that, because you can use that yourself for your own writing. And again, you use it by asking yourself this question: what's my point of view? What's my voice? I mean, you're not wanting, obviously, because you can't have someone else's, but it's not so much that you have to force yourself to have a point of view, it's to free yourself to have a point of view. Do you understand what I mean? The difference of that is like you will have a point of view. Some people will hold theirs back in their writing because they think they shouldn't be expressing that, but let it out and write. And you know, I mean, I just thought of another me rule: write like you talk. Write like you talk. I mean, that's another thing I find sometimes that's actually more difficult. So it's funny. I was talking to a new prospective client potentially this morning, and I said to her, the thing that you've got I can't give you is you write like you talk. And some people have trouble with that. So,
Yeah.
Anyone else? Sue, did you have one to tell us about? But you're on mute.
Said I'm at NYU, so I have to keep my mask on.
Okay.
But that's kind of the deal. But anyway, this is not a traditional memoir, but it's called Unapologetic by Charlene Carruthers. It's actually a treatise on Black feminist queer liberation. Okay. But in between, like, the whole thing is a story. She tells the story of her life and the story of how she becomes politically organized, and it is completely written like she talks. So it is such an, it's a lovely book because it's so accessible what she's saying, because she's talking about her life and she talks about how she learned things and what those learnings led her to believe. And it's really, really beautifully written.
That's great.
Yeah.
Henry, in the chat, there are some more.
Yes, sorry, let me check the chat. I'm sorry to that.
Hannah, who hasn't spoken yet, talks about In the Dream House.
Yeah, can you tell us about that, Hannah? I don't know that book.
Yeah, it's basically about it encompasses of abusive relationship, and it's kind of like a supernatural story, but it's still a memoir. And so she kind of adds elements of like, oh, her house is haunted, but it's just her significant other haunting her house. And so she says, like, whenever her, you know, girlfriend comes home, like she feels like there's like a ghostly presence in her life. And I feel like that's such an interesting touch. Instead of like making it completely nonfiction, she adds like supernatural elements that makes like the reader more engaged. And so I thought that was cool.
Okay.
That sounds great. And so she uses the house as sort of a theme throughout the memoir, sort of to come back to that. That sounds great. I have a daughter who basically says to me she won't speak to me ever again till I read Born a Crime. So now I'm getting 1, 2, 3 people. Now I have to read. That's my assignment. Wild by Cheryl Strayed. That's wonderful. I'm going to give you, we want to get to our writing. I'm going to give you a couple of ones of mine that are favorites of mine. This one's a very unlikely one, I know, but if you all know the tennis star, Andre Agassi, this is probably, in my opinion, not that I'm the huge reader of sports memoirs, but this is probably one of the best written you're going to find. He used some of his many millions he got for this to hire a really top writer to do this for him, who wrote a memoir that I don't have a copy of called The Tender Bar, but I sort of always applaud him for spending some money to make sure he got something done quality. If you guys know I guess the rock and roll singer Patti Smith is also a incredible poet, and she's also an extraordinary memoirist. This is about her relationship with the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe, and most of it's set in the Chelsea Hotel. If you haven't read this, this is fantastic. one of my favorites that I haven't read in many years, but it's this is definitely a classic. The first, she was Maya Angelou was wrote many memoirs, and this was her first one. You know something? Is this all coming out backward? Are you all seeing? I wonder if that's my mom doing something wrong. Anyway, so these are the backward covers. I pulled this off my shelf from a long time ago. I happen to be a fan of the ballet. It's that book published back in the 80s by a ballet dancer, which is great. Now I'm going to do one bit of self-promotion. I was the editor of this book that is backward. It's called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and it's about it's the youngest author I ever published. His name is William Kamkwamba. He was about 22 years old when I met him, and he grew up like poverty like you can't imagine, and hunger in the landlocked African country of Malawi. He invented a windmill. He invented a windmill and figured out how to bring electricity into his village, and that allowed irrigation to come in and change the lives of everybody in his village. And that's why it has this fable-like title, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. It's also became a movie on Netflix. I also didn't mention this last time, but this is also an extraordinary book. I don't know if, this is so weird, it's backwards. This is a memoir called Fugitive.
It's not backwards to us.
Oh, is it not backwards for you?
It's perfect.
Good. Okay. It looks backward to me. This is, I don't know if you.
It's weird. Your own stuff shows up backwards in Zoom, but it doesn't show up backwards to everyone else. I don't understand it, but it's kind of cool.
It's cool, I guess. Does anyone know who Bill Ayers is? Bill Ayers was a member of the Weather Underground. He's married to, still is, I believe, to Bernadine Dorn, who was also an activist in the 60s. If you haven't read this book and you're interested, this is two things. It is a absolutely fascinating story of that time in the 60s, but it happens to be, in my opinion, an extremely well-written, really compelling memoir. Again, I would say you can look at this book from 2 points of view. It's a really great story, but it's also really well done. He understands, he does show don't tell incredibly well. There are incredible action scenes in it, but he also has a really terrific, good point of view on it. This is a good book. So anyway, I think the reason I suggest that we talk about memoirs is, I don't think anybody can teach memoir writing to an aspiring memoir writer better than doing the simple thing, read them. You'll learn more about how to do what you want to do from reading other people's books than anything I think anyone can teach you. I thought that now, does anyone have any more other thoughts they want to share about anything we've talked about? Raise your hand. No. Okay. So why don't we have 15 minutes for everyone to organize where they are with their writing, and is everything, one thing 15 minutes is good, or do we need more time?
Henry, do you want them, for the new people, give them a little more about what you want them to write? What kind of thing?
You're right that we do not have our prompts. I mean, sometimes we have prompts. Betty, Naja, and Sue, you know what we're doing here. What we're looking to do is to write a page, really, of an experience that may have happened to you. One thing I forgot to say, and those of you who heard me do this before, you know what I was going to say, is for memoir, it's also always best, helps you with the show don't tell and the tell don't show, is to focus in on a very small moment. and instead of it, you know, the word, don't tell the story of your whole life in one page. You want to like focus on an afternoon, on a day, on an event. And what we're hoping to do is to get something that you would read that would take 5 or 7 minutes to read back to us. Is that helpful? So why don't we now, it's 2:43 here on the East Coast, and take until 3 o'clock, and then at 3 o'clock we'll finish and everyone can read to us. Yes, Nadia.
Do you want us to read something we write now, or is it fair game to read something we've written in the past week?
It is fair game to do whatever you want.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yes.
And just a technical thing, don't leave the room. I mean, the Zoom room. You can leave your physical room. You can either put yourself on stop video and then turn it back on when the 15 minutes are over, or just leave it running. Whatever.
And go on mute, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm just giving you a warning. We're going to come back in 3 minutes.
Okay.
Back. Omar, you're back. Hello.
Omar, Dan, Henry, Sue never left us.
She never leaves.
Hannah is back.
Always there.
Nadja is back. Nadja, I also heard great things about Lab Girl.
Oh yeah, it's excellent. I really enjoy it.
To get to that one also.
Oh, that's his coffee.
Excuse me.
It's a memoir about a scientist.
Yeah, it's a memoir written by a woman who is a botanist and a geologist, and it's about her journey to become a scientist. And also she talks very candidly about her struggles with mental health, but also does a beautiful job of describing the science itself in a way that is tremendously poetic. So it's just really a joy to read. She does a great job of bridging, I think, science and art in that book.
That's what I heard too. Okay, everybody jump on the chat. I'm wanting all of you to read, and all you have to do is write in the chat, I want to read, or me too, or I will, or whatever you want. Just let yourself be seen and heard, and that forms an order for us.
Okay, Ed, Brady, and Alice have both said they
Yep.
want Nadja.
Ed, Sue, Alice, Nadja. Okay,
I don't know how to do the chat.
Okay, I'm Diane. I'm putting you in after Hannah.
Okay. Yeah. After all these years, you know, I'm computer compromised.
All you have to do is be able to chat.
Diane, you're in good company.
Oh, please.
Okay, let's Ed, you go first.
I'll go first. Okay.
You are faster into the chat than anybody else.
Oh.
So you get a gold chat star.
All right. Hi, good afternoon again, everyone. Just so you know, this is part of a larger memoir that I've written, that I am writing, that I've written.
Yes.
When my father died in 1985, it was sudden. The death certificate read emphysema coronary thrombosis, though the cause was eating 3 packs a day for more than 4 decades and working.
Ed, hold on one second.
Everybody else should mute so we don't hear your background noise.
As a co-host, you can mute people, just so you know. So I went ahead and did that.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry, didn't know that. Okay, Ed, can we you would just barely started. If we could get you to start again, okay?
Sure. Okay. Thank you. When my father died in 1985, it was sudden. The death certificate read emphysema coronary thrombosis, though the cause was eating 3 packs a day for more than 4 decades and working 6 days a week. Dolores and Ed were Dolores and Ed for 43 years. He was retired from bread delivery for nearly 3 years, and he would arise at 3, 4 in the morning until his dying day. Seeing him come home in his green work pants and that jacket with the silver cup patch above the left pocket, he looked like a sergeant coming home from the trenches, also known as the Bowery in the South Bronx. Every weekday before my mom left for her innocuous and mundane position at the bank, she made sure to have the TV tray set up with an ashtray, coaster, an open fresh pack of Salem's, a clean napkin for his false teeth, and at least 2 beer mugs in the freezer. To this day, coming home on a hot day and having a cold brew poured into a frosty mug is one of life's absolute pleasures. Manna from heaven. My God, how the mind works. What was coming into focus was the last day of my father's wake. It is custom for everyone to say goodbye before the mortician closes the casket. After kneeling or simply peering at the deceased, the last to view or comment are the closest family members. My father, the mortician, me and my mom amongst the 24 floral arrangements and empty chairs. As I peered down at my dad in a crisp white shirt and a pristine dark blue jacket, I thought of Shea Stadium. We attended 1 game a year. He'd swap shifts to get a free Sunday. Sitting next to him in those field level $3.50 box seats, having more than a few sips of his beer, seeing him rise and respond when we finally scored a run, the smile coming over my face made my cheeks stretch to perpetuity. I'm looking at one of the finest human beings to set foot on the earth. Yeah, I wanted to have my mom to have privacy with her beloved. These were the last moments she would have with her soulmate. I turned away from my dad and embraced mom, ensuring her all will be fine. As I reached the doorway, I turned back for one last glance of my parents together. As Dolores leaned onto the casket, her shoulders began to heave. She spread her arms, mumbled, gasped for a breath, and collapsed onto my father, her head pressed onto his chest below his chin. As I lowered my head and passed through the doorway, I heard, "Oh, Eddie, please take me with you." That gesture was the most out of control moment of my mother's life until now.
Wow, that's really great stuff.
Thank you, sir.
And you know, I was listening out for, I don't know if I want everybody else has ever heard it, but you've got great narration. You're telling us through the story, but you know, it was your father's death, but it was also who he was to you, and you've got great sort of comments that are just voice. I made note of one of them, and I you know, just your note about your note adding in there, concurring with him that one of the great pleasures of life is coming home to the great, you know, a chilled mug, and it sort of brings the whole thing together, and it connects. It reminds us that it's you telling the story. It's your point of view on what we're hearing, but it also is a compelling and sad story, sad moment. Yes. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Oh, it brought tears to my eyes.
Me too.
It's beautifully done.
I was struck by Henry's advice to us about dialogue and just how effective that last bit of dialogue in your piece is. And it strikes me that often we don't remember the details of dialogue, but sometimes there's little bits that really do stick out in our memory, and those are worth including. And it sounds like that was actual dialogue that you were quoting there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, dear. Just quickly, I believe the nuance, the real juice, the mortar in any kind of a story are those little things. Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
You can pull that out. That to me is, yeah. I personally, I believe that's precious.
I agree. That was wonderful. Sue, you're next.
I'm gonna cheat for a minute.
Thank you. We won't tell.
Okay, we're continuing on the parent theme.
Mm-hmm.
My phone rang. Hi, Mom. I don't want to die here alone. It was the middle of March 2020. I saw something on TV. I don't want to die here alone, she said. She was softly crying and sounded so alone. I don't want to die here alone, she said again. Reggie and I had arrived back from Singapore a few weeks earlier. We were there when COVID emerged. We saw what was happening. Lockdowns in Singapore, quarantines in China, and the US had not yet woken up. I'd been trying to convince my mother, my brother, and my sister that mom was not safe in her assisted living. She did not want to leave. It was her home. She had a life there, however limited it was. Home. The Seattle nursing homes were all over the news. 10 dead, then 20, then 30, then 40, then more nursing homes in Seattle. That's what she must have seen that night. I became more and more anxious. I didn't want her to die there alone either. My brother and sister finally agreed that we should take her out. She'd go to my sisters, then to me. The only thing was convincing her to leave. Apparently, she was now ready. She was crying. I don't want to die here alone. Her fear and pain came through the phone. Okay, Mom, I'll call Robin. We'll get you out first thing. It's too late tonight. There are people dying. I don't want to die here alone. Not able to see my family. I don't want to die here alone. You'll be with us, I promise. How long will it be? I don't know, Mom. Nobody knows. But you won't be alone. I promise.
Wow. That's fantastic, Sue. It seems to get better and better as I hear this. And you know, I feel like we've had a lot of conversations about show, don't tell, tell, don't show. I was just thinking that was what I hope everyone was hearing what a really good mix of that was. She sort of comes in and it was almost as if you could say it was a camera. It was like you see the scene, and then Sue will tell us what's going on, and then you see the scene and she tells us what's going on, and that's what makes it all come together. And I could mention it's the voice and point of view on the story. So terrific. Anyone else?
Keep going, Sue.
Yes.
So I was struck by your repetition. I think I was just reading about how we're taught to avoid repeating words when we're writing memoir, but that sometimes actually repeating a word when it's done intentionally can be really powerful. So I was really struck by how effectively you were able to evoke a feeling by repeating, I don't want to die alone.
Well, Naja, I would say I that's a great observation, and I agree with you. You know what one doesn't want to repeat. You don't want to repeat mundane words. You don't want to repeat words that aren't significant. But yes, exactly. I don't know, Sue. I don't know whether you did that intentionally or whether it was that your mother kept repeating it, but you kept and you remember her having done so. But yeah, that's such a significant phrase. I don't want to die here alone. It's not, as I said, mundane phrasing. It's powerful. And so the repetition of it, I agree with you, is really powerful in there. So yeah, it's always a balance, that word repetition thing. I mean, I believe me, as an editor, I struggle with trying to help writers come up with alternate words for words they use over and over again. But
yeah, I mean,
you're right to watch that, but then Sue found the power in that phrase. So,
in some ways, she said that a bunch of times in the conversation, but I don't know how many times she really said it. But she said it a bunch of times in the conversation. But it was more a feeling than it was in some ways, it's about COVID. It's about people dying alone. Like it's about her, but it's also not about her. It just, but she did say it like a bunch of times in that very short conversation. But it encapsulates something.
Great. Alice, would you read to us? Oh,
Oh, yeah. Hi. Yeah, this is, let's see, I have to go onto a different screen. This is off of your suggestion, Henry, to not leave a big gap in between leave why I left my marriage. Anyway, many things happened very fast when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I guess that's true for most young people, even now. Right out of high school, Mike, my boyfriend and future husband, had his draft date pushed up. This meant he served 2 years rather than 4. Fortunately, he never had to go to Vietnam, but served down south in the military police. I was living with my parents. Did we get engaged before he joined or when he returned? I don't recall which came first, the chicken or the egg. At some point, I had this engagement ring. Thinking about my parents' marriage and feeling mixed about the whole thing, I decided to call it off. Mike exchanged the ring for 5 watches, which he gave to his sisters and brothers. Mike was Irish Catholic and actually had 10 siblings, so half of them lost out on the watch giving. However, we did continue having sex, and it just seemed time for me to move out of my parents' home. I rented a place as far, far away as I could, to places unknown, to the north side of Chicago. Within a couple months, Mike and I eloped. It seemed like such a practical decision. Easy breezy. Ha! We got an apartment in Blue Island, a south side suburb of Chicago. A few small things happened. My parents bought us bedroom furniture. It made me furious. This should have been our choice, not theirs. I purchased a dozen clams, boiled the heck out of them until they were as hard as golf balls. Couldn't cook worth a damn. My name was Alice Rydell. Why did I have to change my last name? Signing as Alice Conway felt like I was contorting my hand in some strange way. A bigger issue was the arrangement with our apartment building. It was a small building, 6 apartments. We got a special discount on the rent because we were the maintenance team. Rather, I was. Mike worked long hours as an auto mechanic shop, while I had the luxury of attending college. So I was the one who swept and vacuumed the staircases and polished the rails. I was the one who made sure all the garbage was appropriately stored in the bins out back. One night, when dumping a bag in the bin, some tenant dropped a bag of garbage out the window. It spilled all over. I was the one who had to clean it up. Crap, this is married life? I had a growing awareness of racism and painted a large abstract face of an angry Black man with the glow in the dark orange eyes on 3x5 poster board. I told Mike I wanted to nail it to the ceiling above our bed. He said, "You're crazy." He was also stoned most of the time, which was something I could not do. But the key thing happened in my English literature class. The instructor, Robin Herndobler, talked of Shakespeare and things, talked of emotive writing, things I never heard of. She did all the talking and the class stayed silent. So one day she asked us to write what we were experiencing in class. I wrote about feeling physically shaken. I wanted to cry and run out of the room. It was all so new to me. I felt so ignorant. She read my paper out loud in class, commenting on the honesty. Right then and there, I fell madly in love with Robin Herndobler. I started going to her office for counseling, told her I wasn't happy with this marriage thing. She gave me her phone number. I remember calling her one night crying. I didn't want to be in a life I felt stuck in. She told me I didn't have to stay stuck. I could leave it. And I did.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is good. Alice, we heard from you last week what comes after that, and in many ways, that telling us about how you got there makes. I'm doing my out of order thing. It makes your other writing even more powerful and meaningful to know where you came from and how you got there. I just feel like with everything that you're writing here, it's all just wanting to expand out more and more and more. It's incredibly well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I see, but we're getting lots of comments in the chat here. I hope you'll see that.
Really
I hope you'll keep
for sharing it.
working on this. Yes.
Naja's next. She has a meeting.
Yes, Naja. Yes, we're going to get you in before 3:30. We've got plenty of time.
Okay, awesome. I just asked my 3:30 to push a few minutes, so hopefully I can take the time if needed. All right. So this is from a piece that I'm writing about my experience with growing up. So we have the parent theme coming back again. And my dad has sent me to make a potion. I'm 5 years old. My dad has sent me to make a potion, and I'm supposed to get hairs from a billy goat's tail. So this is about that experience. Sonny the billy goat is alone in the upper pasture, the minotaur in his lair. I smell him before I see him, his unmistakable capric stench. He runs toward me and hurls himself against the fence. Sonny's appearance is made lopsided by a single horn that sprouts above his left eye. The horn shouldn't be there, but my dad watched the process of removing it when Sonny was small. He failed to hold the iron against Sonny's head long enough, dissuaded as he was by the little goat's bleeding. Now my dad and Sonny both pay for this moment of kindness. The horn grows with remarkable speed, crookedly, curving backwards towards Sonny's skull. To keep it from penetrating Sonny's brain, my dad periodically tackles the goat and hacks the horn off with a handsaw. I've watched this process more than once, my dad panting and sawing, his biceps bulging as he kneels on Sonny's neck, the goat's 200-pound body thrashing beneath him. Today, in the absence of my dad, Sonny is unquestionably in charge. He puts his front feet on the fence and surveys me sideways through the dark slit in his golden eye. Standing on tiptoe, I'm still unable to meet his gaze. Sonny's tail is pointing away from me. There's no way for me to reach it. As I think back on this moment, I pause to question my own recollection. Did my father really send the little me barely out of diapers alone to collect 3 hairs from a billy goat's tail? Yes, I believe he did. From the beginning, my father gave me these gifts, his trust, a sense of purpose. I don't know if it worried him to watch me go, tromping through the weeds, swimming in my 2 big rubber boots. I doubt it. I suspect that the instant I left, he sank back into his thoughts as his shovel sank back into the earth. He regained his solitude as I exercised my independence. I stand near the fence, considering my dilemma. A crow alights beneath the crabapple tree. She settles her feathers and pecks on a fallen apple, filling her beak with sweet flesh, tilting her head back to swallow. The crow takes off in a flurry of blue-black as I approach. She doesn't go far, just to a nearby cedar a few branches up. She watches me as I pick up an apple. It's wet and a little soft with decay. I walk back to the fence. Sonny has become distracted by one of his favorite pastimes, drinking his own urine. He bends backwards, curls back his lips, and laps at the spray with his extra long tongue. Thus engaged, he momentarily is less intimidating. Here's Sonny, I call, holding out the apple. He comes at me in a rush, again throwing himself against the wire. I hear the fence post crack. The crow flaps away with an offended caw. It's just the 2 of us now, me and Sonny. He extends his long snout as far as the fence will allow him and lips toward the apple in my hand. Up close, his odor is so strong it's nearly visible. I pinch my nose and drop the apple inside the pen. Sunny nuzzles it in the mud. Unable to open his jaws wide enough to take it in, he tries to pierce the skin with his teeth. He's distracted. This is my chance. The gate has a simple fork latch that rests securely over a post. I try to lift it quietly, but metal grinds against metal. Sunny flicks his ear in my direction. He continues nosing the apple. I open the gate just enough to squeeze through. Suddenly, Sunny is there, a whirlwind of hair and stink. Goats have an uncanny way of sensing the opportunity of escape, and Sunny is particularly good. A goat Houdini. As he pushes past me, I make a grab for his tail, feel it slip through my fingers. Sunny doesn't even notice. He gallops to the gate without slowing, heading straight for my dad's fruit trees. I open my hand. There they are, sticking to the sweat in my palm. A clump of greasy white hairs. Magic.
Yay. I want to know, okay, but you're going to have to tell us the potion was, once you pulled it all together, did what?
Well, it's part of the story.
Okay, well, we'll have to wait for the next installment to find out. Your writing is terrific, incredibly descriptive. You get into details. I hope everybody, this is sort of the theme of today's class. If you notice, it's cinematic. We're there, and then she pulls us back to now. Comments, goes back. It has a very wonderful sort of documentary feeling to it, but it's also I like that it almost has a sort of, it's told from an adult's perspective, but has a sort of childlike feeling to it as well. So it's terrific. Anyone else?
Well, this has nothing to do with writing, but I'm just curious as where you grew up. Where did all this happen?
This is in the coastal mountains of Oregon. So the setting is somewhere else in the piece, but it is important. It's a good question you're asking, Dan.
I can smell Sunny.
Yeah.
If you've ever smelled a billy goat, boy, is that a distinct smell.
They don't make perfume out of it, I take it. Oh, okay, fantastic. Thank you, Nadja. Hannah, you were going to read to us as well?
Yeah, so I did a revision of my revision that I did for last week. Okay. So my violin string has stopped singing. When I finally crack open its case, placed directly beneath my bookcase, it creaks like a tune. Phantom cobwebs and dust littering the velvet coat. Snug inside, fit as if sleeping there forever, my violin is cold and untouched. As I hold the fingerboard and gingerly place it upon my shoulder, I become a ghost of my past. I'd played in many concerts in high school, performing pieces from Bach to Mozart. Playing the violin had become a part of my life, an extension of my being. There was no time for anything else. I did not even have a second to pick up a book. Going to school, attending the orchestra class, going to rehearsals, and performing for seasonal concerts, this had all become my routine. For the MPA, an event where bands, orchestras, and choirs perform in front of judges, I had sat at the front of the stage, taking my place as first chair, an honor after practicing relentlessly every day. When the piece began, as the conductor breathed in and raised her baton, I exhaled and led my entire class through the entire ensemble. I trembled as I struck the chords, plucked the strings, my foot tapped sporadically on the wooden stage. The music pulled through me as if the tune were my blood, soaring through my veins, a necessity for living. As I continued, the nerves of performing in front of talented judges drifted away from my fingertips and blew away with the song. "You did so well," my mother had explained backstage after we finished. I never felt so proud. After I graduated from high school, my days began to fill up with college tours, trips, and jobs. My violin lessons were canceled, and my schedule had filled up so that I could not play in college. An interval of timelessness had seeped into my life. No music, no sound. I had tried to practice in solitude, secured behind my barred bedroom door, when I did not feel the same rush of excitement as I did when playing amongst my peers. I placed my violin in its black case, zipped it shut, and barred it from my life, as it served as a reminder of who I could not be. "When will you play again?" my mother asked me every day. I cannot answer her. The exhilaration of playing the violin was suddenly gone, and I simply did not know how to play without that same feeling. "Where is it?" I asked the violin. "Where is that moment, that breathless, invigorating touch that we once shared? Where has our song gone?" In a span of a few months, I had received my answer. A friend had placed something in my empty hands where my violin was once perpetually placed. a leather-bound book, a story of fantasy, of mystery, of love. For the first time in my life, I took that empty space of time, a vacuum left by my violin, and filled it with something else. But by that time, I finally had time to truly read. My mind had suddenly been consumed by voices, seeing a plethora of worlds and a spiritual periphery. The frozen state of my heart melted quickly. Suddenly, there was a beacon in a silent, dreary, cold darkness. It had pulled me out of a frozen state and moved me, like I was back on that stage. That feeling of excitement and significance. My song had caved itself into words, into stories. The tune had become a cadence of storytelling. Books took over music pieces, writing replaced performing. And so when I cracked open that violin case after casting it away for so long and placed the violin upon my shoulder, knowing that it would be our farewell, I knew that I had welcomed something else in its place. Although my violin has stopped singing, I will forever remember when it did. And with my voice of storytelling, I will begin my own song.
Yeah, that's really terrific, Hannah. I think the thing I like about it most is how it has sort of multiple layers of you remembering your experience with the violin, but also where you are with it now. And Hannah had let me read a revision in between. I still think you might be able to say a little bit more about why it is you needed to leave the violin behind in order to move on in your life story. But again, the story has so many multiple layers to it that and from a technical point of view, the way you weave back and forth with that, using your writer's voice to guide the reader back and forth, the writing is really strong and well done and descriptive. Does anyone else have a comment to make, Ben? But I hope there are very nice comments in the chat, Hannah. I hope you'll see that.
Yes. Also, I agree. I feel like I could definitely like flesh out more. Like I could definitely go into like another page or something, just going into like why I left it. But yeah. Thank you.
I said that to you because I thought it seems to be an important part of it is sort of one, it's like a little, it's sort of a missing piece of our understanding of it. And frankly, I think you writing about that, I want to hear the answer. I want to know why it's because it has to be very internal. I would imagine so. Now, this is not you don't have to pronounce in the chat. Anyone want to read to us? You can raise your hand. Diane? Yeah. Oh, Diane, you know something? I promised you I was going to remember you and I forgot you. So I scold myself.
Okay.
Yes, please read to us. I beg your apology.
That's okay. The title of this is The Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Past the cemetery office as usual on my way to work twice a week. Looked at the small building that housed the chapel and the office of Washington Cemetery in Brooklyn, where Grandma Sarah was buried. What did it feel like to my dad to come here on June 28th, 1928, a young boy, not even 17 years old, to bury his beloved mother? Grandma Sarah went to the hospital for a D&C and was found to have stage 4 uterine cancer and died on the operating table. Wondering who went to the funeral, the cemetery, to put her in her grave. To whom could Dad express his feelings? His father, Grandpa Harry, was not a very supportive person. My recollection of Grandma Sarah's family was Aunt Jenny, who was sweet but slow, Aunt Lizzie, who was blind and didn't and I didn't know much about her. And Aunt Annie, who was placed in Rockland State Hospital by her husband. She was there for many years until she died. Aunt Annie was my father's favorite, and he visited her regularly by himself and buried her when she died. My father really never got over the loss of his mother. My mother reports that they would go to the cemetery every week. My parents were already a couple when they were in high school. As a child, memories of visiting the great grave site were a regular occurrence. As an old man who had difficulty walking, Dad, his walker, and myself would visit from time to time. Over the years, he always talked about if his mother had lived, he would have been a lawyer. As I'm writing this, I can't believe that I never thought to ask him about the feelings that he had as a 17-year-old boy.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Diane. Your memories are incredible. I also love that you that you tell us what you don't know, and that again, for everybody observing that sort of or listening to it, that's a way of Diane the writer having a point of view that it's not she's writing about her father and her father's recollection of his mother, but it's also Diane's story about her relationship with her father and what his mother meant to him. And it all becomes part of her family story. That's really beautifully done, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Diane, I noticed you end with this comment that you can't believe you didn't ask your father about his experiences. And I think it's a good reminder to all of us that sometimes we forget to ask people when we can, and then later we wish we had.
Yeah, it was, when I was writing it and thinking about it, I said, how is it possible? Because he would have talked about it. That's the point. So it was a missed
opportunity.
Yeah.
I think, I feel that way too about my mother having died, all the things I would have asked her that I didn't, but there are some questions that don't appear important until somebody is gone. And there's a way that, I don't know, I just think that's such a universal feeling, because part of it's about not that particular question, but that the person you can't talk to anymore, you can't have new conversations with them,
Right on, Sue. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you tap into something universal like that, Diane, then we can all relate to it as we're listening. So such a good thing to include.
Well, it's also, I think that a lot of what happens, and then someone's gone and you can't ask them, it's how it's the takeaway. This isn't about writing, but it's a life question. It's the tough questions that we don't ask, and then they're gone, and then all of a sudden it occurs to us, no, that was the most important question I should have asked. So thank you for reminding us of that, Diane.
Thank you.
I'm going to take off, friends, for my next meeting. Thank you all. It was great to meet everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Sharing your memoir.
And for reading.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks for listening.
So we are over time, Henry, so I don't know if the other two people who haven't read want to read, and those who want to stay could probably stay if you can.
I don't ever like to point fingers, but no one's a buzz. But Betty or Lorraine, anything to read to us? That's fine.
I have to say no. My hands don't work very well anymore, so I can't really type and I can't really write. So
Mm.
I do the stylus thing one letter at a time, or I dictate. So
Okay.
I couldn't do that while we were on Zoom. So I don't have very many words to share, so I'll save it for another time.
Please save it for another time. Keep thinking writing then, and get it
Yeah.
out however you can.
Oh, seriously,
your-
I'm about to start getting stuff finished. I am.
Good. Keep working at it. Does anyone have any question before we sign off, or thoughts they want to share?
Yeah, are you gonna do this again?
Well, that's a great question.
I think it was very useful. You know,
Thank
I
you.
think a lot of times people do workshops that aren't very practical, but even your summary of the first meeting was good information.
I talk fast.
I was thinking we started with gratitude and ending with gratitude. This was really lovely, and I really love doing it with all of you and with Henry. And so thank you.
Well, I enjoy working with all of you. I'm always overwhelmed by the talent. Seriously.
Yeah. No, I was really blown away too by the beautiful stuff you all wrote. Really. And there is, I think, a hunger for this kind of thing. So hopefully we will be doing this again in the next semester of Let's Learn. And I don't know, Henry and I will talk. Maybe we should even do 3 sessions to give those, so you
Possibly.
keep expanding your writing.
Mm.
So again, thank you for coming. The Let's Learn, as you know, is just beginning. Our next class, online class, will be on Monday, October 18th, and it's called Improv for Everyone. And it's with Marion Rich, who is a great improviser, one of the founders of the Global Play Brigade, longtime actors at the Castillo Theater. And we already have a bunch of people signed up, and it's very international. We have people from a number of different countries. So look on the website of the Lloyd International Honors College, and then click on the Let's Learn website, and you'll see the whole semester. And it's all free.
Oh, could you repeat that? Lloyd Honors?
Lloyd International
Oh,
Honors College.
oh, okay.
Part of the University of North Carolina, and they're working with the Eastside Institute in making this free international Zoom school possible. And thank you, Henry, for sharing your experience and wisdom with us.
Thank you for inviting me, Dan. Thank you for everybody for coming,
you.
and see you again soon sometime. Hope.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Maybe
Bye.
live sometime.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.